What's up, everyone? It's Sphinx here, bringing as another commentary. So, this is, again, I've already seen this video. I'm basically using this video as more of a talking point, and I'm going to be providing criticism, critique, and also, wait, didn't I just say that? Criticism, commentary, and my own thoughts, because this is a very specific topic that has first started occurring like a year ago, I want to say, about the Mandela effect. But I don't actually think that the Mandela effect is real. I think that some people misremember things, but I don't think it's actually a thing. And it's definitely an interesting thing to think about because it is very interesting how a million people can get something's wrong, misremember things. But it's also not too far-fetched that some people would misremember things. Because that's just the nature of the internet, or not just the internet, but just in general, people often spread misinformation and incorrect information, and people believe it, and then makes it runs around, and people believe it, and it's not correct, and then they realize like a few years later that it was never that case to begin with. The case of misremembering is not the same effect. But let's talk about it.
A little bit different because we're only going to talk about one theory, and that's the Mandela effect. So I've done a video on this before, maybe a year or two ago, but since then there's been so much more evidence and proof. There's been more people talking about it. It's just become so much bigger of a theory. So today we're going to go through the whole thing. So for those of you who don't know, the Mandela effect is basically when a lot of people have a memory of something, but then when you look back, it never actually happened. So for example, a lot of people remember September 11th actually taking place on September 10th. But of course, as we all know, it wasn't. So that would be a Mandela effect. And one of the theories for this happening is that some people think that we have actually switched into a different parallel universe. Or some people think that maybe somebody traveled back in time and changed something small, and then that thing affected a lot of other
Yeah, that would
kind of like the movie The Butterfly Effect. When Ashton Kutcher went back in time, he picked up a pencil and dropped it or something. And then when he went back to the future, a bunch of little things were different. And this makes a lot of sense to me, because think about it. Time traveling is going to be a thing. It might be 1,000 years in the future, but it will happen. Which means that people have been traveling back and forth through time. They have to have been. And if you want to get me on an even bigger conspiracy theory, I think that UFOs are actually just time machines. Because they all look very similar, but they all kind of look a little bit different.
I'm not sure where you can get that from. Okay.
One was built 1,000 years later. And I don't think those are aliens. I think those are just time travelers. But that's a whole nother video. So the reason it's called the Mandela effect is because a lot of people remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison. But then on December 5th of 2013...
And that's called misinformation. The news gets stuff wrong all the time. It happens. And this was one of those cases. Not because of, in fact, it's because there was misinformation, miscommunication, and the article was wrong about him dying in prison.
Nelson Mandela died, and it confused a lot of people because they're like, I thought he already died years ago. And a lot of people thought that, which is why it's called the Mandela effect. Now, this is where it gets creepy. So there's a book called English Alive, and it was published on October 1st of 1991. And inside of that book is a quote that says, Nelson Mandela died on the 23rd of July in 1991. And that's in a book that was published years ago. And you can't put things like that in a book if they're fake, or else you'll get sued. Which means that this is a piece of evidence that he actually did die a long time ago, just in an alternate universe. Oof. Fucking creeps me out. So now I'm going to go through some of the most popular examples of the Mandela effect. Once again, I've talked about some of these before. So number one, the Berenstain Bears. This
is one where I definitely disagree with. They have always been the Berenstain Bears. They have always been the Berenstain Bears. I remember because I always insisted that they were the Berenstain Bears for years. and people would always call them the Bernstein Bears. And that really confused me because it was AIN. I always knew that it was AIN. Some people somehow thought it was EIN. No, it has always been the Berenstain Bears. I don't know where this Berenstain Bears came from, but it has always been the Berenstain Bears. Always. Always. It has always been that way. If it wasn't for a house where I could probably show you guys the VCR case, because I lost all the tapes in the fire, in a house fire several years ago. But like, it has always been the Berenstain Bears. That's why I don't understand how this whole Mandela effect occurred. I mean, people get stuff wrong all the time. And it's interesting because people say there's a saying where a million people can't be wrong, right? But sometimes a million people can be wrong. And that's what makes it interesting.
Everybody remembers the Berenstain Bears being spelled EIN.
No, it hasn't. It has never been that way. It has never been that way. It has always been the Berenstain Bears. It has always been the Berenstain Bears.
I grew up on these books and these cartoons, and I remember very specifically it was Berenstain Bears.
No, it wasn't.
And I find out, nope, it's been Berenstain Bears.
It has always been the Berenstain Bears. I don't know. It has always been. Always.
The whole time. Every book cover people have found, every clip from the show that people have found, have all said Berenstain Bears. But everybody remembers it as Berenstain. Just to give you proof,
I don't know how this happened though. It has always been the Berenstain Bears.
Call my mom right now. She does not know I'm calling her. And I think you guys should do the same thing. Go ask your parents if it's Berenstain or Berenstain, and I guarantee you they're going to say Berenstain.
It's Berenstain. It has always been the Berenstain Bears. I know this because I watched them all the time. They were always AIN. Always. That's why I thought people who said they were Berenstain Bears were crazy. Because, like, no, it's the Berenstain Bears. Always. It has always been that way.
Alright, here we go.
Hey, honey, I almost missed you. I just got to the gym.
Oh, I'm doing a conspiracy theory video right now, and I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, so do you remember a book series when I was a kid, and it was like a family of bears? Like there was a mom and a dad.
Oh, yeah, the Berenstain Bears.
The Berenstain Bears?
Yeah, the Bernstein or the Bearstein, one of them.
So it for sure wasn't the Berenstain Bears, right?
I remember the Bernstein Bears.
Again, I'm not really sure where this comes from though. Like, okay, actually I do. I mean, I remember in like 4th grade or whatever, I had a teacher who insisted that they were the Berenstain Bears. But I knew that they were the Berenstain Bears. Like, they've always been that way. I just thought that they were spelled differently. I thought it was just spelled EIN, and for some reason it was Stain Bears. But I've always known that it was the Berenstain Bears. And like, maybe I didn't switch alternate realities with everybody. And that's why I've always known that it's been the Berenstain Bears. It has always been that way. Guarantee it.
Well, actually, it was the Berenstain Bears the whole time, but for some reason we all thought it was the Bernstein Bears.
How strange.
I think that can happen with misprints and, again, miscommunication and it just being a normal thing. Like, sometimes misinformation can become a natural thing.
So technically, people think that we're in an alternate universe where for some reason it changed.
Cool.
Alright. Alright, have fun at the gym.
I want it. Okay, good fun.
Well, here you guys go, my mom. So everybody's been freaking the fuck out over this because we all remember it being Berenstain. Well, a picture
No, it hasn't. It's always been the Berenstain Bears.
came out recently, and it's gonna freak you the fuck out. So one Reddit user looked in their garage and they found a really old tape of the Berenstain Bears. They posted this picture, and on the front of the tape you can see it says the Berenstain Bears. But then on the side of the
It's called misinformation. It's called a typo. It's called a typo.
same tape, it said the Berenstain Bears. Fucking crazy. Now, this picture has been put through a bunch of tests. People have investigated it to make sure it's not photoshopped and make sure it's real, and it's fucking real. Which means that is another piece of proof that the Mandela effect is real. Now, another very popular Mandela effect is Sex in the City. So everybody that I know remembers the show being called Sex in the City. And then you realize, no, it's been Sex and the City.
That's a really easy one because, like, it sounds the same. When you say Sex in the City and Sex in the City, it sounds the exact same. When you say it fast, it sounds the exact same. And people can mishear that without actually seeing the title. And they say, oh, Sex in the City or Sex and the City. And we also are not always careful with our words, so we can often abbreviate the and, so it can be like Sex in the City, like salt and pepper. Like, it's not salt in pepper, but it's salt and pepper. And it sounds like you're saying salt in pepper, but it's salt and pepper. But the way that people talk and the way that people communicate can sometimes be misheard and misunderstood.
And then recently, this came out. So here's a clip from some award shows back in the day where they called it Sex in the City. Check it out.
Nominees for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series are
Kim Cattrall, Sex in the City. Kristen Davis, Sex in
That's an accent. Guarantee it.
the City. Cynthia Nixon.
It's like I said, like, a lot of people say salt and pepper. But they're not saying salt in pepper, they're saying salt and pepper. It's just that accents and people abbreviate things and people do like the, that sort of thing. They abbreviate the word, they say it quickly. It's like salt and pepper. It's peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Like, it's not that it's a different word, it's just the way that they're saying it. It's an accent thing. It's not that's actually what they're saying.
I know, fucking crazy, but that's not the only thing. Someone on YouTube who goes by the name of The Whole World's Watching posted this video. He has a fan package of Sex in the City that has like perfume and cups and stuff, and they all say Sex in the City. Check it out.
Alright, you want proof of the Mandela effect? Sex in the City. No question, what it used to be. Hard fucking.
There could also have been a name change as well. That's also possible. But, like I said, I think it's all about miscommunication, misinterpretation. We say in a lot to replace and people can use that and say, well, you said in, not and. And again, this has to do with accents. It has to do with typos. Sometimes publishing companies don't know the actual thing, and they just go by what they hear. I don't know. I don't believe it.
Most of you are gonna say, "Oh, he's a graphic designer. He made the fucking box." Plus the in, it's a different color. But thank God my girl still has every fucking thing in here that says it. Again, and again. Yeah, stamped into the fucking plastic, carved into the glass. You fucking name it. Now, I didn't go out here and make a fucking Sex in the City soaps and all this shit.
So there you go. It says Sex in the City. That's not a typo, because that's what it was. It's what we all remember. And you know what the craziest part is? I went to this video and I went to other articles online of people talking about the Sex in the City Mandela effect, and there's a very similar comment on all of them. This comment I found says, LOL, it's always been Sex in the City. The creators even talked about it. Lay off the bong, dude.
I think it has always been Sex and the City, but like I said, the way that people talk, the way that people perceive things, makes it seem like it's Sex in the City versus Sex in the City as in and the city. That's what happens when you abbreviate words and you don't say the full thing. And it's just an accent thing. It's not necessarily a typo, but it can be perceived, or it can be misheard. It can be misheard. How people say Sex in the City versus Sex and the City. Like I said, a lot of people say salt and pepper. But that doesn't mean that it's in pepper. It means it's salt in pepper. You know what I mean? It's just an accent thing. It's just a speech thing.
It sounds like a pretty normal, like, angry YouTube comment, but that same exact comment was all over the internet. It was all like, lay off the bong, lay off the drugs. It's always been this. The creators have always said that. To me, kind of seems like whoever is in charge of this whole thing is like going around the internet trying to debunk it, which, I don't know, creeps me the fuck out.
Again, people mishear things and they spread it around and blah blah blah.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, or did she?
Magic mirror on the wall.
Again, a lot of people are misinterpreting things, mishearing things. Yes, well, okay. The reason why a lot of people think it's mirror, mirror on the wall is because generations after that, stories after that about Snow White have actually used mirror, mirror on the wall. Because I don't know. But it's never made actual sense why she would say mirror, mirror on the wall, because unless she's like trying to get his attention, like mirror, mirror on the wall. I think that's another thing that's been misinterpreted, misheard. I don't even know how that would happen. But to say that it's in effect and it's because of time travel doesn't make sense. When it's in the actual product itself, you know, someone doesn't just go in and change the voice actress's lines to magic mirror. It has always been, you know, I mean, mirror, mirror. It has always been, you know, magic mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest of them all? Just because people misquote it and misinterpret it doesn't mean it's the Mandela effect, you know?
Who is the fairest one of all?
Yeah, she said magic mirror on the wall, but we all remember mirror, mirror on the wall. And then
The reason why I remember mirror, mirror on the wall is because renditions after that used mirror, mirror on the wall. But the original movie has never ever said mirror, mirror on the wall. And in fact, another thing that plays into it is the fact that Shrek is a parody of Disney movies, of all Disney movies. And in Shrek, they use mirror, mirror on the wall instead of magic mirror on the wall. It's just a thing. That doesn't mean that there's an effect. That doesn't mean that something's changed. It just means that people got stuff wrong.
Forrest Gump, we all remember him saying life is like a box of chocolates. Or did he?
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates.
Life was like a box.
Yeah, it's always been that way. Again, mishearing, misquoting, misreading, it's all the same thing. Like, people often misquote things and often misread things, and it just happens. But that doesn't mean there's an effect associated with it.
Box of chocolates? How come I don't remember anybody ever saying that? It's always been life is. Then probably the most famous one is we all remember.
It has always been, no, I am your father. It has always been that way. It has never been Luke, I am your father.
In Star Wars, him saying, Luke, I am your father. No, he didn't.
He told me you killed him. No, I am your father.
Yeah, I don't even know where the heck Luke, I am your father came from. I mean, I know I've said it before, just because, you know, that's what everybody else says. But it has always been, no, I am your father. And I'm really surprised that a lot of Star Wars fans get that wrong. Like, you would think that they would know one of the most iconic lines in the whole film, in the whole series, and they don't. That's the funny part. It has always been, no, I am your father, because it makes sense in the context. Like, he's not addressing Luke. He's answering his question, or answering him, you know, saying, "Oh, I thought you know, and Obi-Wan said that you killed my father. No, I killed. No, no, I am your father." It makes more sense conversation-wise, and in the scene, it makes sense that he says, "No, I am your father." Now, there is a possibility that the quote was changed, "Luke, I am your father," to make it make more sense out of context. Like, "Luke, I am your father." But it has always been, "No, I am your father." That's why I don't really believe in the Mandela effect, because I always remembered it as no, I am your father. But I've used Luke, I am your father, just because that's what everyone else uses, and that's that's just that. But it has always been no, I am your father.
Yeah, he never even said Luke. This next one I just read about, which really fucking freaked me out, is Febreze. So we have all remembered Febreze, that fabric spray that makes things not smell like shit. I've always remembered it being spelled Febreze. F-E-B-R-E-E-Z-E. Febreze.
To address the Febreze thing, that's actually not too far-fetched to believe that people have been misspelling it. It has always been spelled with one E. It has always been Febreze, as in F-E whatever.
I literally remember going to the store and seeing it there and grabbing it. I remember it being spelled like that.
Let's wash it with Febreze.
Yeah, it has always been spelled this way. Always. It has always been spelled Febreze. Always. But I think what happens is that our brains fill in the missing pieces. It's like when you see that that's sort of I can read this, that sort of stuff. It's like your brain replaces the misspelled words and spells them correctly in your brain. That's just how it works. When you see something misspelled, you can often tell what it is, even when people spell it wrong, because your brain fills in the rest. It's oh yeah, that's this or that's that. But that doesn't mean that it's an effect. It's just that your brain sees Febreze and it spells it correctly the way that it should be spelled. But that doesn't mean it's always what it is actually spelled as.
2 more ways to breathe happy.
Literally, what? That is not how it's spelled. That is not how it's spelled. It has always had 2 E's. That one fucking did.
No, it hasn't. It has never had 2 E's. Never has. Never will.
Hurts my head. And this next one hurts my head even more. Oscar Mayer Wieners. Okay, we all remember Oscar Mayer. M-E-Y-E-R. I even remember the song. My Baloney has a first name, it's O-S-C-A-R. My Baloney has a second name, it's M-E-Y-E-R. Isn't that how you remember it? It's how I remember it. Looking at the name Meyer, you would think it would be M-E-Y-E-R. Nope.
My baloney has a first name. It's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name. It's M-A-Y-E-R.
No. Fuck no. It is not A. You know what M-A-Y-E-R is? John Mayer. That's how you say it. Mayer. Not Meyer. That's one of those ones that really fucking pisses me off because I'm no universe. Stop.
People spell names differently all the time. People spell John, 3, 5 different ways. People spell Caroline 2 different ways. They spell Megan 15 different ways. It's not that far-fetched to believe that they just had a different spelling of the last name. And people, again, it's kind of your brain replacing it to what you would naturally see and would naturally remember. Your brain does a lot of interesting things. It's going to correct what it believes is wrong, and correct it with what it believes is right. That's just what your brain does. Your brain lies to you a lot. Your brain lies to you a lot. Just the I could read this, sort of meme, where it's all the words are scrambled, but you can still read it because your brain does all of the processing and thinking. Yeah, we're used to it being spelled M-E-Y-E-R. That doesn't mean it always was. It has always been M-A-Y-E-R, but people don't remember it that way for whatever reason. It's not necessarily the Mandela effect. It's just people misremember things, people mishear things, people misread things, and it's also probably because it's all about hearing in this case. If you actually saw the logo, you would realize that, oh yeah, it's M-A-Y-E-R. But when you hear Meyer, you automatically think M-E-Y-E-R. And just like how you automatically hear Sarah, and you most likely automatically think S-A-R-A-H, when there's a different spelling where it's S-A-R-A, without the H. And likewise, you hear Megan and you think Megan when there's also Meghan and all sorts of other different spellings. And when you hear Caroline, you automatically think Caroline. Did I do that right? But it's also Carolynn. Like, there's multiple spellings to different things, and just because you hear a last name and you hear a name doesn't mean it's spelled the way that you think it's spelled. Like, that's why people often say, "Oh, it's spelled just how it sounds," Michelle. But some people might have a different spelling for it, and then they correct you, like, no, it's actually spelled this way or that way, or it's pronounced, Paul instead of Paul. Like, it's the same, like, it's that sort of thing, Last names and first names have always had all sorts of spellings to them. This isn't a new thing.
Fucking with me right now. Another one like that pisses me off is Jif peanut butter, which I always thought was Jiffy. I feel like everybody else thought it was Jiffy.
It has never been Jiffy. It's always been Jif.
Jiffy peanut butter. Jiffy.
Jif like GIF,
That's how I remember it? No. It's always been...
It's always been that way. Yeah, it's always been 3 letters. I don't know what the heck people are thinking with this stuff. It's always been 3 letters. It has always been that way. No. I think people get confused with Jiffy and Skippy. Skippy is a different brand of peanut butter. So I think what people have done is they've merged Jif and Skippy together to make Jiffy, which is weird, but it has always been Jif and it's always been Skippy. It has never been Jiffy or something like that. Like, that wouldn't fit well on the container. It has always been this way. Like, Jif, as like when people say Jif, oh, you're talking about the peanut butter. Like, Jif, like the peanut butter. I say Jif, not GIF, and people are supposed to be, oh, you mean like the peanut butter? Like, I don't understand how people think that it's been Jiffy. Like, that's never been a thing, ever.
And the last one we're going to talk about is Curious Little George. Now, you guys remember Curious Little George, the Curious Little Monkey? He's had his own movies, TV shows, albums. He's a cartoon monkey, and we always remembered him as having a tail.
No, he actually has not ever had a tail, and I know this because I was an obsessed fan of Curious George when I was a little kid. And I know that he had no tail. You know why? Because he's a chimpanzee. Chimpanzees do not have tails. He's not a monkey. He's actually an ape. Of course, it's a kids show, so they're going to say that, oh, it's a monkey, because little kids don't know the difference between it. They don't know the difference between a monkey and an ape. So they're gonna think, oh, they see a monkey and they say, oh, yeah, that's a monkey, and it has a tail, but it's a chimpanzee. And chimpanzees, I believe, don't have tails. Yeah. Curious George, I believe, is a chimpanzee. But he's drawn in a way that makes him look like a monkey. In fact, you can probably find it. Yeah. The book features a brown orphaned chimpanzee named George. He has never been a monkey. He has always been a chimpanzee. Now, as a little kid, you're not gonna know the heck the differences between a monkey and a chimpanzee. You're gonna assume that's the same thing. Like, oh yeah, chimpanzee, monkey, ape, whatever. But no, he's always been a chimpanzee, which is an ape, not a monkey. The difference between a monkey and an ape is that one has a tail and one doesn't. Well, one of the differences. An ape does not have a tail, and a monkey does. And he has always been a chimpanzee. Now, I think because we assume that, he is a monkey, because he does have the sort of monkey characteristics, we assume that he has a tail. but that's never been the case. And he has never, I can probably dig up Curious George's books where I can prove that he has never had a tail, but I won't do that because honestly, I don't know where they are. But I also can point out another thing. This is a Monopoly game from like, this is the oldest Monopoly game that I have ever had. And people say that the Monopoly dude has a monocle, but he has never and will never, you guys see that? Have a monocle. I don't know where the heck this thing came from, where he has a monocle. I think it's because he wears a top hat. And the thing is that a lot of people assume that just because you wear a top hat means you wear a monocle. Because, you know, the whole you gotta have your top hat and monocle thing has been a thing for a while. But he has always and will always not have a monocle. That's not the right thing. He has never had a monocle. This thing is probably older than me, and he's never had a monocle. Never. You can see that. You can see that it's old by the tape. But like these are things where it's like, at first I understood where they were coming from. It's kind of mind blowing. Like another one is Pikachu has always had a black stripe on his tail. But no, that has never been the case. In fact, if you watch the original TV series, you know that he doesn't have a black stripe on his tail. You would know that. Now, there might be depictions and fan drawings of him having black tail, but that doesn't mean that he actually has one. In fact, he's never had one. He has never had a black tail. And die-hard Pokemon fans should know that, and they do. It's mainly the people who weren't as avid and weren't as active in the fandom who think, oh yeah, he had a black tail. But no, he never had a black tail. It's kind of funny how just because a million people misremember things and get things wrong, it suddenly means that there's this whole effect thing, where it's actually perfectly reasonable to believe that people just misheard things, people misread things, people got things wrong, misinformation has been spreading for years and no one has corrected it. Like, I have always known that the Berenstain Bears were the Berenstain Bears. Always. And I thought it was weird how people thought there was the Berenstain Bears, but they were the Berenstain Bears. I always knew, and I always knew it. So it doesn't make sense. Like, if there was actually a Mandela effect, you would think every single person in the world would have been affected, correct? Because everyone's memories would have been altered, and everyone would have remembered that it's the Berenstain Bears, and then realize that it's the Berenstain Bears. But I have always known that it's the Berenstain Bears, and I've also always known that Curious George doesn't have a tail because he's an ape, not a monkey. I've also always known that Mr. Monopoly Guy has never had a monocle. Sure, a top hat and monocle looks cool and everything, and people will often draw him with a monocle just to complete the set, but that doesn't mean that he's always had a monocle. That just means that people have drawn a monocle on him. You know? And it's kind of interesting how people assume that he had a monocle, but I think that's mainly because he wears a top hat, yes. So people assume that, oh, just because you wear a top hat means you wear a monocle. But that's not the thing. That's not the same thing. That's not exactly right. It's kind of interesting to look back on how I kind of did believe the Mandela effect at first, but then I was like, no way, this is stupid. And I'm not discrediting Shane. He made a very good video. He made very good points. But at the same time, I don't believe it. For 1 second. Like, I can't believe it. Because I know for a fact that certain things were never misread or never, it has always been the correct version where it's, no, I am your father, not Luke, I am your father. For whatever reason, it has turned into Luke, I am your father, but it has never been that quote. It has always been, no, I am your father. Just because people got the quote wrong doesn't mean that it's some sort of effect. I mean, right? Comment down below. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Do you guys believe in the Mandela effect? Why? Why not? What are some crazy Mandela effects that you've heard of that you feel like sharing? If you like this video, make sure to leave a like. If you did not, I'm sorry. Hopefully you'll like the next one. Don't forget to subscribe for more content. Follow me on social media, do all those fun things, and let your flames run high and bright. If you guys are amazing, peace out, have a good day. I'll catch you guys next time on the Plane TV. Peace out, and stay awesome, guys. It's been a blast. Thank you guys so much, and bye. Hope to see you guys in the future. That was really weird. Peace out, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.